I don't know. It just doesn't make sense at this point.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. This Indiana rematch is going to be exceedingly difficult. Some more thoughts on that in the second segment. The blitz pickups and all the things Oregon has to do better if they're going to advance to their first national title game in 11 seasons. But let's start with this utter madness. That's the only way to describe Oregon's running back situation. Now, apparently, I've been told Jay Harris is in. I believe Will Stein said that he's in Atlanta. That would indicate, even though his name has appeared in the portal, that he's going to be able to play. Someone's got to be out there. Maybe Kenyon Sadiq lines up in the backfield a bunch. Maybe Braden Platt starts taking snaps at running back. Dude was really good in running back or in high school at the running back position. But guess what? He's never played running back during his time with the Ducks because he's been, training to be a linebacker. So what this ultimately comes down to with Jordon Davison being out, Lamar in the portal, Hughes in the portal, Harris, Dan Lanning's talking on Thursday. We'll see if he's available for the game on Friday. The Oregon coaching staff has to have its best coaching performance ever. And I think if you went through the litany of big games that Dan Lanning has won during his time with the Ducks, number one's got to be Ohio State last year. I mean, literally forced a rule change by the NCAA, taking the 12-man on the field to chew the clock. I mean, that was next level game management to beat the team that went on to win the national championship. The Penn State game earlier this year, also up there, because that matchup was a difficult one on the road. Penn State was off a bye. You've got a young team. Penn State's more experienced. They've got a great staff. And you found a way to win the game. And you won it going into double overtime after having squandered a 14-point lead in the second half. I mean, that takes some guts, resolve, and a true level of belief in the locker room. So ultimately, with all these discussions, and it's totally insane. It's insane. I'm not faulting the kids. I'm really not. Because Jay Lamar or Mekhi Hughes or Jay Harris, they all know that they're not going to be feature players. And they're talented enough at the right school to play a lot. And most guys aren't going to go to the NFL. But maybe they want to go to the UFL or the CFL. You know how you'd get to a place like that to play football professionally outside of the National Football League? You got to have actual tape. You have to have put together real seasons. You have to have been productive. Or if you're someone that says, hey, I've only got a couple years left and I just want to play as much football as possible, well, you're not going to do that at Oregon, barring an injury. And by the way, Oregon hasn't stopped recruiting the position because I tell you what, I think Tredarian Ball can contribute as a true freshman from this 2026 class. But as long as Jordon Davison and Dyer Hill are with the Ducks, which they will be, it's going to be hard to see the field. And they know that. So if you want to be angry or frustrated at the situation, I can't blame you. I'm annoyed with it. Because here we are for the second time. It's a different circumstance going into a big game, and Oregon's missing some notably key players. Most notably, Jordon Davison with an injury. Devin Allen was out with an injury. Darren Carrington got suspended. And then in the national championship against Ohio State, Oregon's receivers struggled catching the ball. I can't guarantee that Oregon would win the game. Maybe they wouldn't, but I know they wouldn't have lost by 20. Because they would have had drives that would have stayed alive. Like, It sucks that we could be in this particular spot. But I want to bring this back to the coaching staff. In a game where not only the odds makers, but I think most folks that cover and talk about and know the sport would say Indiana's got the best staff in college football. They are doing the best job coaching of anybody in all of college football, that already walked into your own building and got a win. That is vastly more experience, not just on the field, but with their staff than you are, that has got two coordinators who are not going to be head coaches elsewhere, and thus aren't at least partially distracted by the new opportunity that has been offered to them. There are a lot of disadvantages in this game. And you know what? The last time Oregon faced a bunch of uphill battles like that, it was Penn State. And they found a way, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty. And there were fourth down decisions that some folks might have questioned. And there was a missed field goal in there. I mean, there were a lot of moments where you look back and went, boy, Oregon really didn't play its best brand of football on the offensive side. Sappington missed a field goal. That doesn't happen super often. And yet they still won the game on the road. If Lanning is able to overcome all of this, and if he truly goes into the game with two running backs he can use. By the way, De'Aaron Hill being on the field, this is the other reason it's so challenging. He already presents, I think, a lot of attention from a defense. He carried the ball 3 times for -3 yards against Indiana. Jay Harris carried the ball 1 time for 1 yard. He was stopped on 4th down. I don't even know if he gained a full yard on that play. Those are now, presuming Jay Harris is actually able to go, 2 of your top 3 running backs going into the game. But the other thing that makes this challenging, and why Will Stein is going to have to dial up a masterclass of a game plan throughout the course of this one, and Noah Whittington is going to have the game of his life. Has anyone seen De'Aaron Hill pass block this year? I don't know that they've asked him to do it. Good, check PFF real quick. I don't know if he even has a blocking grade. De'Aaron Hill is a guy who is blocked for, not someone who does the blocking. So if you were to have De'Aaron Hill in the game, and you're in any sort of situation, De'Aaron Hill's pass blocking grade is 67.7 according to Pro Football Focus. He has been, according to PFF, in 1 pass block rep this year. 1. Noah Whittington, 46. Jordon Davison, 29. So if De'Aaron Hill is in the backfield, Indiana can all but know, unless they suddenly are going to put De'Aaron Hill in that sort of spot, tough as a true freshman when you're 5'11", around 200 pounds, and haven't been asked to do it so far this year, they can look at him and say, hey, he's either running a route or getting a handoff. And they have definitely used some play action with De'Aaron Hill, but if you know he's not staying into pass block, I don't like rolling out with any sort of formation, and this is why I'm not a coach and why Will Stein has got this job, and it is not going to be easy. But when you have that limitation, because of factors outside of your control, you got to make adjustments. You got to make adjustments. You got to find a way. You have to put on the coaching game of your life. And it goes without saying that the defense and special teams have to continue playing at the level that we have seen in these big games, whether that was Penn State or Texas Tech in particular. Washington, I think, falls into that camp. Iowa, defense aside from one drive, was really, really good. Special teams, absolutely money. I think without Jordon Davison being in there, who has also been a huge part of springing De'Aaron Hill free for his big runs this season, because he's been the lead blocker, you got to make adjustments, find a way to run the ball. And Noah Whittington has not carried the ball 20 or more times in a game this year. I won't be shocked if that winds up being the case. Oregon has steered away from, the bell cow running back situation, because it can wear guys down when you play as physically as Oregon does. We saw that a bit with Jordan James last year, I think. And heck, I think we even saw it to a degree with Bucky Irving at the end of the 2023 season. I mean, Washington's defense also just played really, really well in that game. But yeah, it's just insane. It's insane that we're in this spot in the national semifinal. College football has got to fix this, man. I don't know who's going to. I'm not optimistic that they will, quite frankly. But you got 2 coordinators that are balancing their time at the very least to some degree. And then you have two running backs. And look, maybe Jay Harris is about to have an absolute legacy game. And he's about to do things that we've not seen. PFF's got him clocked at 5 pass blocking snaps this year. So that'll be a Noah Whittington assignment. And by the way, he's not as good at it as Jordon Davison. Against the defense, I'll talk about this more later. But yeah, it stinks. Absolutely stinks. Jordon Davison, by the way, one of the 20 highest graded running backs on PFF this year. I didn't know that. Did not know that until I was recording the show. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch, whatever is easiest. So let's keep diving into Indiana and how Oregon flips the script and wins the game. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That is where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You'll love how it tracks your subscriptions and lets you cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. Enough with that nonsense. And you can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights. They've got an automatic transaction categorization. It's a game changer. Absolute game changer to get you on the right financial path and help you accomplish your goals. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All caps, all one word. Get on that financial path that you have been waiting to get to. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Did you think I was going to forget Oregon's latest transfer move? No, of course not. Sure, they've been tied to Coy Parrish, the Minnesota transfer, which begs questions about whether Dylan Thieneman is going to return and not go to the NFL draft. And sure, they have been tied to A.J. Harris, the Penn State corner, who would start opposite Brandon Finney and make one of the best cornerback tandems in all of college football. But Oregon's making portal moves where it counts. I will never overlook the importance of the third side of the ball. Not in this game, not going into next season, never. It'll never happen. Oregon has added long snapper R.J. Todd from Western Michigan. Yep, long snapper is not even a position that PFF grades, but Oregon's had a good one in Luke Basso for the last couple of years. So here's one thing I did want to just kind of throw out there, because I am not saying this to be facetious. I legitimately think this is possible. Oregon's been incredibly quiet in the portal so far, and they have only announced the additions of a punter, a kickoff specialist, and a long snapper. I wonder if, regardless of the result of Friday's game, if next week you don't start seeing some serious announcements on the Oregon front. That's not intel that I'm reporting. That's just me theorizing that this has kind of been the appetizer and that the entree is still around the corner for Oregon in the portal. So just keep that in mind. But R.J. Todd, welcome to the flock. Let's talk about this Indiana game more. So, bunch of SSAs here. Start with this one right off the bat. If Indiana, Oregon both play A+ games, Oregon wins. Well, it's kind of a tough SSA. I don't know that both teams can play an A+ game. If Oregon plays an A+ game, they will win. But if they're putting out an A+ effort on the field, that means they're forcing Indiana into, at best, an A- or B+ effort. Because Indiana outcoached and out-schemed Oregon. And now, Dan Lanning and Will Stein and Tosh Lapointe and everybody else on both staffs have to figure out how to make the adjustments from that game, particularly when it comes to protecting Dante Moore, but also in some areas on the defensive side of the ball. Oregon allowed 3 long touchdown drives. They weren't given short fields to work with. Indiana thrice moved the ball up and down the field. Now, I remain adamant that the defense was not the reason that Oregon lost the football game. It absolutely was not, because they gave you every opportunity to win. Right before the half, bad sequence. Bad sequence for sure. Missing the field goal, giving up the drive when Indiana was just handing the ball off and they picked up 12 yards and got out of bounds, and then all of a sudden they got to a 58-yard field goal and hit that. It flipped that game in a big way. If Oregon leads that game at the half 13-10, I mean, not just from a literal point standpoint, I think that game goes very differently. But 2 phases of the game let you down. Sappington missed, defense didn't hold. So I think what you're getting at is that if Indiana plays at their best and Oregon plays at their best, Oregon wins. I'm at a 9 on that. The question is whether Oregon's offense will look like an offense playing to its potential, or if it will resemble the last matchup where nothing really worked other than running the ball, which they got away from and they were down and all this sort of stuff. Because if Oregon plays really well in every area except getting Dante Moore into a rhythm and getting him seeing the defense well, then none of this matters. Because you will not move the ball on Indiana's defense if you can't identify where the blitzers are coming from, how to pick them up, and what that means for your answers in your reads for a given play call. So, yeah, I'm at a 9 that, Oregon wins if they both play really well. It's just that Indiana forces you to playing not well, and I don't know how much confidence I honestly have in the Oregon offense in this game. I feel great about the defense. I feel good about special teams. But the offense in the biggest games this year outside of USC, and that was a great performance, no doubt. That's not the best defense Oregon faced this year, but it's a good unit that they played incredibly well against. You think about weather made Iowa even tougher, but the Washington game, Oregon moved it up and down the field, couldn't get in the end. Reds, I'll tell you right now, my keys to the game tomorrow, on Friday's show, which will be another crossover with Goins, red zone offense is going to be a huge key for Oregon in this game. Because the few times they did move it up and down the field, they didn't always turn it into points. And against Texas Tech, they moved up and down the field and they didn't turn it into points. Against Washington, they moved it up and down the field and they kept settling for field goals. Points are going to be at somewhat of a premium in this game. I just don't think Oregon can survive if they get on the plus side of the 55 times and walk away with 13 total points. I don't think that's reasonable. As well as the defense is played, you're not shutting out Indiana. This is not Texas Tech. So, anyway, little rambly there. But, yeah, on the SSA, yeah, if Oregon comes out and plays to its fullest potential, they will win the football game. The question is whether or not the coaches are ready to put that performance on the field. So, another SSA here. The Fuskies started a trend of limiting the Duck run game with their scheme. JMU attempted to follow it, but lacked the horses to pull it off. Texas Tech also put a damper on the run game against Indiana, and we must run between the tackles early and often. So, Stephen Daly being out is notable for Indiana. I've mentioned this before. The injury sucks. I don't like that that's the way that Oregon's gotten an advantage. But Jordon Davison is not playing in this game. And Noah Whittington has run the ball most successfully between the tackles. And yeah, the way that now he can run outside as well. But Dier Hill has had most of his success outside the tackles. He's, I think, underrated as a little bit more of a physical between the tackles guy, but he does his best work on the perimeter. I think we all know that at this point. And Indiana certainly did as well, because his least productive game of the year came against this Indiana defense. They were very ready for him. And Oregon has rotated those running backs incredibly well this year. They've used a lot of different schemes and concepts to get them the ball, to show the defense different looks, and it's been really effective. And Oregon's run it better this year than they ever have before in the Dan Lanning era. But, if fundamentally your SSA is against Indiana, Oregon must run the ball between the tackles early and often, that's a 10. that's absolutely a 10. If you, against this defense, get into a straight drop back passing game, I don't like that for Oregon at all. Against Texas Tech, I was more okay with it. And my number one key in that game was running the ball, but I also said going into the Red Raiders game, I don't have that much confidence that their secondary can consistently cover Oregon's receivers. Guess what? They couldn't. Their pass defense was not, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. And if Oregon had stopped shooting itself in the foot, they might have won that game by even more than 23-0. And I mean, it was 16-0, then a late touchdown. But, I think that what Washington did in that game schematically is something Oregon has to find answers for, because Washington did not take away the Oregon rushing attack with elite personnel. Texas Tech did. Indiana is going to be closer to Washington. They're going to be making the schematic adjustments to try to take away the run game. Now, Aiden Fisher at linebacker is really, really good. He would start for the Ducks. And there are a handful of guys on this Indiana team on both sides of the ball that would start for Oregon. There aren't actually that many. D'Angelo Pons would start at the other corner slot outside or opposite Brandon Finney. Aiden Fisher would start at linebacker without question. I actually like Dante Moore more than Mendoza. Mendoza's just more experienced, but I like Dante Moore better. Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, obviously. The two wide receivers, that's probably it. Well, I mean, one of the running backs would probably get reps in this game, but so might you and I. So I don't know that that's saying a whole heck of a lot. But yeah, what Indiana and Washington have both done, I think, is take away certain things with their game plan and play calling, and Will Stein's got to have the adjustment for that. So, another SSA, your concern level on the defensive back departures, much lower than the running back. Running back, like not having those guys there and not having Jordon Davison, my concern level is about an 8. With the defensive back departures, it is sitting at a 3.5. And the reason it's not lower than that is as long as everybody stays healthy, it's all good. Once one guy gets hurt, either Jaden Kennedy or Dylan Thieneman or Aaron Flowers, you are now relying on someone who's severely less experienced. I think Kingston Lope is a much better player than Peyton Woodyard, and Woodyard is the next safety that he'll be the first safety off the bench. If, God forbid, one of those guys were to go down, get called for targeting, or their helmet comes off for a play. And heck, maybe Woodyard is the guy they're training at nickel. Maybe Naeem Offord is getting in there at nickel. We don't know how all that's going to go. But yeah, it's definitely more solid because the starting group, who I know are really good, they are there. The starting group for the running backs, not all there. And that's a concern. So that's why it's that's why it's only a 3.5, but still something to keep an eye on. More on Indiana. That term, I joked with Goins earlier this week. How many times do you think we can say the term simulated pressure on the last crossover we did? And guess what? I'm going to say it like 7 more times on this show because I can. Okay, this question came in from the Soda Report. Question for the show. Indiana ran a lot of simulated pressure and it confused Dante Moore and Oregon's O-line. How many other teams has Oregon played a similar scheme to what Indiana runs? So, Penn State and Jim Knowles do it some. I don't think it's exactly the same because their defensive scheme is actually very similar to Oregon's, or at least one of their base packages is, with the way they use the safety in that rover position. Oregon does it with Dylan Thieneman. They did it with Zachy Wheatley. And then the year before, he did it with Caleb Downs at Ohio State. So he's the defensive coordinator at Tennessee now, if you didn't know. Anyway, he being Jim Knowles. So Washington ran some similar concepts. I don't know that I can say any defense is a one-to-one comparison, but the biggest contrast, and it's a different type of challenge, there's no wrong way to do it, But Texas Tech has elite personnel up front. That's how they pressure the quarterback. Indiana, on the other hand, does not have a first-round pick on the defensive line, complemented by a couple of other second and third-round picks along the defensive line. The way that they generate pressure is something that, honestly, Oregon should be able to prepare for. And that's because they run plenty of simulated pressures themselves. Lanning's done it for quite a long time, and Tosh Lupoi has used those sorts of blitzes. So Oregon should be able to prepare for them. The trick for Dante Moore in the offense is identifying them, and that's why it's such a good defensive scheme. You see Mike McDonald doing it with my Seahawks. Brian Flores doing it in Minnesota. I think Jesse Minner is running it as well over with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh and our guy Justin Herbert. But, the sack leaders for Indiana this year are Elijah Hardy and Isaiah Jones. They're linebackers. They are not listed as defensive linemen. I mean, Hardy is 5'11", 225. Jones is 6'2", 230. They are traditional linebackers. I'm not talking Mateo Uiagalelei, outside linebacker technically is the position that he plays. No, these are actual linebackers. And the way that they blitz them, you're 100% right, confused the Oregon O-line and Dante Moore and made him not see the field well. And the offensive line just let too many free rushers get home. So, yeah, Washington, I think, is the closest. But, Texas Tech, Iowa, USC, those teams, Minnesota as well, they're a little bit more straightforward in their approach, and they just have some better personnel. But I think Washington is the closest one, which should give you some optimism because Oregon's offense was largely good in that game. They moved the ball. Dante Moore was only sacked a couple of times. And they just have to be better in the red zone. Gosh, that's going to be important in this game. One more to wrap this show. And then tomorrow will be a crossover with Goins. So if you have any more questions, you can send them to me. I won't answer them on the show. If they're about the game, if they're about portal stuff, then it'll be on a later episode of the show. But SSA, this game will be Will Stein and Tosh Lupoi's swan song, as both will bring their best and excite their respective fan bases to the semifinals, the real national championship. For personal and emotional and jinxing reasons, I'm not going to answer the second one. But I think Tosh Lupoi just brought his best defensive performance in a big game. You cannot do better than that. I know the Tech offense had some limitations, and Baron Morton's good, not great. The receivers were good, not great. Offensive line, good, not great. A shutout, that's crazy work. That offense scored 42 points a game in the Big 12. And yeah, the Big 12 is a conference that's not as good as the Big 10. 42 points a game, man. They're good. I don't think you will see Oregon's defense play that well and be that prepared to execute early and often and throughout the course of the game maybe ever again. I mean, given the stage, win or go home, the pressure of being back to the quarterfinal, you heard Lanning on Ducks versus them, 365 days we've been waiting to get here. Well, there it was. You had all that pressure, and you went out and played like that. It doesn't get much better than that unless they shut out Indiana. I would equate, because of the difference in talent on offense, if you held Indiana under 10 points, I'd say that is the equivalent of shutting out Texas Tech. Anybody think that's going to happen? I'm sure the most optimistic of Oregon fans out there certainly do. But I think both fan bases are already pretty excited. Will Stein's got his quarterback, Kenny Minchey, who was going to Nebraska. Now he's going to Kentucky. I don't know what that means for Austin Novosad and what his future is going to be at the quarterback position. But I think Cal fans are already stoked about Tosh because of the performance against Texas Tech. He's also brought down Kingston Lopa with him, who I think is a good football player. So, yeah, this is a... look, if they do bring their best... Well, Tosh already brought the I think, best you could possibly see. But of the two, Stein is actually the one that needs to level up his game the most. He's got to be the most different, the most improved from the last matchup, not Tosh. So do I think that's going to happen with Stein having to focus on Kentucky at least a little? I'm putting this at a 2. I hope I look back and say this is my worst SSA take of all time. That's what I'd like to say, but I'm sitting there at a 2 for that one, for the reasons I listed. So, quick follow-up on trivia, by the way, from the other day. Did pretty well. Hit 4 out of 6 defensive MVPs for Oregon's New Year's Day games since 2012. It was Kiko Alonso in 2012 against Wisconsin. I got that. I got Tony Washington in the 2015 Rose Bowl, Brady Breeze in the 2020 Rose Bowl, and then Brandon Finney, of course, from the Orange Bowl this year. The 2 I missed, it was not Steve Stevens. It was Jeff Bossa in the Fiesta Bowl against Liberty. Did not remember that. And another linebacker. How about that? 3 true linebackers getting these defensive MVP awards in the big games. Michael Clay. Eric Dargan had 2 picks, but Michael Clay in that Fiesta Bowl. Oh, author of the fumble recovery that made Chip Kelly jump for joy. And Oregon fans everywhere. So that was a great trivia question. 4 out of 6, man. If I could get 4 out of 6 Jeopardy clues, I would have been on the show already. But we'll save that for a later day. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And go Ducks.